Hi guys, is this the perfect analogy for what the new Labour administration has to deal with after 14 years of Tory rule? So the Politics Live show had its usual panel of guests, somebody from the governing party, somebody from the opposition parties, and a neutral, not always the case, neutral observer. Also, John O'Farrell gave a pretty good analogy as to what Starmer has inherited. But he also said here that any narrative must have some truth to it. Have a listen.
What do you make about the discussion, John, about being honest and transparent, as Labour are saying? Election campaigns are different. They are campaigns. But is it really honest of the new Labour government to say that all the fundamental and structural problems that are evident in the economy are all the fault of the previous Conservative government on things like overspends?
Well, no, I think it's true to what Chris says about not... You open the books and you see that you can't afford all the things that were promised. The idea that Labour had to cancel hospitals, these were fictional hospitals made up by Boris Johnson. He would just go, we're going to build 40 new hospitals, and he never had the funding or the planning to actually make that happen.
But they might help with growth, which is the core mission of Labour. Yeah,
no, the growth, I absolutely agree that growth has to happen. But I feel like the Labour Party's come in, it's like someone who's bought a second-hand car and then you find the sunroof is leaking and there's a Right Said Fred CD stuck in the CD player. It's like you suddenly realise it's much, much worse than it looks when you first got it. And as a writer...
Well, Alec appreciates that metaphor.
I'm of an age with Right Said Fred.
But as a writer, you appreciate that there has to be a narrative in politics. Yes. Labour's narrative as it comes in is they've left the place in a terrible mess. But also, narratives don't work unless there's an element of truth. So I think that they're not just making up any old nonsense and expecting the public to believe it, because it is true. Things are in a terrible state, and I think they're even worse than we thought they were.
How long do you...
I like the Right Said Fred CD stuck in the CD player and you can't get rid of it. Horrible to have to listen to. But it's actually worse than that. There is no engine. There isn't a sunroof. It's not that it's leaky. There isn't a sunroof. The Tories are trying to sell this idea that Labour have inherited a Rolls Royce, but in reality it's a Reliant Robin with no sunroof and no engine. And maybe, yes, the Right Said Fred CD stuck in the CD player. What the Tories are now doing, it seems, is lying once again. They lied when they were in power, and they're lying when they're in opposition. Suggesting that the Labour Party are getting rid of 40 new hospitals because they can't afford them. But as was pointed out, Boris Johnson lied about those 40 new hospitals. So the Tories know that Boris Johnson lied, and they're trying to use Boris Johnson's lies in a way to attack Labour. So in the past, they would attack Labour with Boris Johnson's lies, saying, well, you don't want to build 40 new hospitals, we do. Now what they're doing is they're turning it around and saying, you're going to cancel all these 40 new hospitals, when in reality, a lot of them are not going to be built. There were not 40 new hospitals. In some cases, it's a lick of paint on a building or an extension or an upgrade. There weren't 40 new hospitals. We talked about this before. So cancelling something that Boris Johnson didn't actually have in the first place is not cancelling. But of course, the Tories are going to run with that because they believe, okay, we can use the narrative of, we've left a disaster. They're having to deal with this disaster as something that we can spin as, see, they're not putting the priority of the British people at the forefront. And we're going to see more of this. Everything that Labour bring out as this was a lie that Boris Johnson or Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak tried to promote as a solution to a problem, it will be thrown back in their face as you're trying to undo the great work that we did over the last 14 years. Now, for the Conservatives, at least for the time being, it's going to be difficult for them to try and spin the idea that they actually left the economy in a good way, because ordinary people are not seeing this. Ordinary people are still suffering the cost of living crisis. There will be a lot of pressure, I think, going forward for Labour to do something about that. They will have to turn things around. It's right that they point to the last 14 years as an absolute disaster, and it could be right for them to continue to use this into even to the next Parliament. But people will expect some change. People will expect things to be fixed. And if you don't, you'll just be playing into the Tories' hands and Reform UK's hands as well. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.